Candilejas, teatro y espectáculo con César Vidal.
We are back, and as always, every Friday we are back with a very special person. You already know that the people with whom we conclude the program from Monday to Thursday are very special people in areas such as economics, literature, psychology, and so on. But on Fridays, we always have a very special person. Sometimes that person is known all over the world and is a person who maybe won the Oscar or is a dancer, but is very well known all over the world. Sometimes it's a person who is very well known only in one nation or in a region within a country, but anyway, we always bring you a very special person. Of course, that's the case tonight. We are going to have a very special person related to the persecution of Christianity, related to the lack of religious freedom, related to the need for religious freedom around the world. I'm talking about Bishop Gedeon. Bishop, very good evening and very welcome.
Bishop Gedeon, good evening,
and welcome. Bishop, we know that you have gone through very hard times, very difficult times of religious persecution. Where has that religious persecution been taking place?
I have been subjected on several occasions of religious persecution, both in Ukraine, as twice I was illegally stripped of my Ukrainian citizenship, despite the fact that I was born there, and also twice arrested in Europe, in Greece.
I believe that you are Orthodox, Mr. Bishop. You belong to the majority religion in Ukraine, which, if you have to correct me, but it is the Orthodox religion. And the same is true, for example, in Greece. Why did they decide to persecute you and arrest you?
They persecuted me solely because of my religious beliefs. The fact is that today in Ukraine there is a division in the church, and there are several Orthodox churches. Let's say one true Orthodox church, the authentic one, 1,000 years old. And let's say two illegal ones. Illegal. I am referring to the Kiev Patriarchate and the PSU. These are illegal from the point of view of Orthodoxy, from the point of view of Ukrainian Orthodoxy. I can see why the government illegally supports churches in Ukraine, although they are outnumbered. And because of this, there has been a crackdown against canonical Orthodoxy.
I see. Well, I have a couple of questions on this first issue. Is there no religious freedom in Ukraine? Do you know of more Orthodox believers who have been persecuted or had their churches closed by the Ukrainian government?
And the politicians believe that if they destroy the Orthodox Church in Ukraine, they would also destroy the Russian world in Ukraine. But to do this is impossible for two reasons. The first reason is that God created this church. And the second reason is that we are outnumbered. It is the largest religious organization in Ukraine, with more than 13,000 churches and 300 monasteries.
And what is happening with these churches and these monasteries? Are they under pressure from the Ukrainian government?
Yes, they are under heavy pressure from the Ukrainian government. Many monasteries are forcibly closed, as I said before, even to the point of killing the clergy, imprisoning them, closing churches, or the temples are forcibly closed down and then handed over to illegal religious organizations. But because they don't have people, they stay empty. Because today, it is still possible to force people to war with machine guns. But in a church, it is impossible.
Well, the truth is that I am listening to it and I am remembering past times in Ukraine. I remember, for example, the 17th century, when the Polish government in Ukraine decided to make life very difficult for the Orthodox Christians, because the Poles are Roman Catholics and even the keys of the Orthodox churches were given to the Jews to humiliate the Orthodox Christians. It seems that now the situation is much worse.
It is much worse. It is much worse now. Because not only are the keys being handed over to all kinds of illegal religious organizations, I won't tell you which ones, but human souls that are killing in this way, not only souls, but also bodies. I mean, the whole point of this persecution of the illegitimate to them is paradoxical. They believe that the canonical Orthodox Church in Ukraine is persecuting Russian policy, which is fundamentally false, because the church is Orthodox. It does not make any kind of policy, neither Russian, nor Ukrainian, nor American, nor French, nor Japanese, but the policy of Christ our God. Of that. That is the question. But this is the way in which the enemy of the human ancestral is fighting against Orthodoxy in Ukraine. That is falsified.
Now, the Orthodox Church is a universal church. It is a universal entity. We are not talking about something that is limited to one country or one region. We are talking about a religious confession that is universal. How can you explain the silence in the face of the persecution of Ukrainian Orthodox Christians? Why don't other Orthodox Christians, Bulgarians or Romanians, for example, cry out against this kind of abuse that includes murder, robbery, desecration, and a long etc.?
I can explain it with my personal experience as an archive of the Orthodox Church. Let's put it this way, that for God there is no nationality. It says that I was only in Europe. I traveled all over Europe. I served in the Holy Land. I traveled in the same countries, the same Bulgaria, the same Romania, the same Greece. I myself am half Greek. I served everywhere. People, and clergy. They understand. But the government today is European, is anti-Russian. That is to say, they speak. Now we talk about politics. We will not say anything. Anti-Russian politicians. Therefore, this is what the politicians of the Orthodox countries say. It does not mean what the Orthodox believers of these countries say. Orthodox believers in these countries. These are absolutely, they say in Odessa, two big differences. And the confirmation of my words is the fact that the episcopate of these countries is also divided. Those bishops who are, as they say, have a close relationship with their Joromancer, here have embraced the systemists, that is to say, they support European policy. So also, everything is divided. And let's say those bishops and clergymen who understand the current situation, they do not support, i.e., they do not allow Ukrainian schismatic bishops to enter their churches, priests. So even on the Holy Matathos, there are also monasteries that, let's say to the schismatics and recognize them, and there are monasteries that do not recognize them. That is, this decision has occurred not only in Ukraine, but throughout Orthodoxy. The same thing is happening in the United States, everywhere, all over the world.
And in the face of this problem, because we are talking about real persecution, we are talking about people who desecrate monasteries, who seize things that are not theirs, people who murder believers. What can we do? What can we do in the face of this situation, which is a real disgrace? Because the truth is that nobody has the right. Nobody can persecute another person because he belongs to some church of a religious denomination or something of this kind. So what can the international community do in a situation like this?
There is a lot that can be done because God is given to silence. It is very important to understand this. I thank you for raising this issue, a very important issue. Few people today dare to talk about it. Even many of our people in Ukraine who have suffered and are suffering from this persecution. They are afraid to tell the truth because they are worried for their loved ones, for their relatives, for their families, for their loved ones, for their relatives. They are worried about many things. So, because if you tell the truth, you can suffer for it. But you can do it. First of all, you have to open up. Sin is strong when it's hidden. You have to open up the problem. What you're doing is opening it up. Expose it as widely as possible to the society of the world. Explain that the persecution of Orthodoxy in Ukraine has nothing to do with politics. Do not combine one thing with the other, because otherwise it will be a religious war. it will be terrifying because it will spread not only in Russia and not only in Orthodox countries, but everywhere. Everywhere. It cannot be allowed because there will be millions of victims. Millions. Already, look, already in Ukraine, hundreds of thousands of people have died. And it continues. And the Europeans who go there are dying, and God forbid a nuclear war breaks out. We are on the brink of a nuclear catastrophe. And for what? Why should we even think about it? It's ridiculous to think about it, to reason about it, because of a handful of people. A handful of people in the West who lived in Ukraine to destroy such a powerful country. For what? Does it all really come down to this? Well, yes, I'd like to say, in view of the impending disaster, that's all I'm going to say. This is real. Don't close your eyes. Closing your eyes doesn't mean that something is going to pass you by. It needs to be talked about. Hide this sin. But through messages like this one, how we are communicating with you and addressing international law enforcement. But unfortunately, I know they don't work. And here's a look at this. My speech at the United Nations. What did you give back? Nothing, except being arrested for the second time in Europe. That's what he gave back? That's what I'd say he gave back. Nothing. I would say it made it worse. So there's no benefit to this organization. They don't work. They don't work. Unfortunately, just general prayer.
And the international organizations are doing nothing about it.
Nothing. I mean, international organizations today are politicized. Do you know that? Better than I do. They are only concerned with issues that are favorable today for European politicians. Do you understand? They don't pay attention to you. How many times can we talk? I had huge documents that I presented even to the US government and videos, all that stuff, a lot of things. And they said, when I talked to them, well, why? What? They said, sir, about nothing personal, just business. That's today. Today, everyone understands everything perfectly. What do you think? The West Europe educated people do not understand what is happening today in Ukraine, that there is a persecution of Christians, a terrible persecution, destructive, that fascism in Ukraine is glorified today. But it is true. Well, don't close your eyes. But it is true, the horror that is happening today. But that no one pays attention. Nobody.
As I was listening to him, I remembered a poem written by a German evangelical pastor who opposed Hitler, whose name was Martin Niemöller. And in it, Martin Niemöller explained what Nazi Germany was. He wrote, "First they came for the trade union people, but I wasn't from a trade union, so I didn't care. After that, they came for the Jews, but I wasn't a Jew, so I didn't care. After that, they came for the socialists, but I wasn't a socialist, so I didn't care. And when they came for me, there was nobody left." And I have the feeling that people close their eyes when the Orthodox, whether they are Russians or whether they are Ukrainians, are being persecuted, and they don't realize that someday they are the ones who may be persecuted. And nobody, absolutely nobody, is going to worry about it.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Because today, I would characterize the attitude of the people today is a general psychosis. You know, there has been such a general psychosis in history. Now, if we were to go back 80 years ago in Germany, right? And not only in Germany, but in Europe. After all, the Soviet Union was at war. Not only Germany was at war. Away in France and Czechoslovakia and Polish troops, it was the Soviet Union silenced later. They say Normandy Niemen, but Normandy Niemen was 500 pilots, forgive me, and 500 pilots from other fights. French fought against the Soviet Union, and it was like that everywhere. Norway, Finland, Denmark, all other countries. After all, the German machine was not only Germany. So it was a general psychosis. And then when they came into Berlin and started to look for ideologues, well, where to talk to them to solve it? They said communists with ideologues of fascism. They didn't find them. They all became anti-fascists in a second. Wherever they went, wherever they entered the house, let them enter. They were greeted with lights, my father told me, even better than in Russia, and they shouted that they were all anti-fascists. Right here, he said, son, I couldn't see. I wanted to see them. I couldn't find anyone except the fanatics shooting from the corner. So it will be now, because we need a great victory over evil. Everything is evil. Because the people are today in a state of delirium, general psychosis, and everything will fall into place. God's will, of course, apocalypse in action.
Well, Mr. Bishop, I thank you very much for your time with us. I do appreciate it very much. And when these interviews were done directly in a radio studio, I used to give one of my books as a gift to the people who had the patience and the courtesy that you have shown. But of course, this is not possible right now in cyberspace. And so, instead of a book, I leave a melody, a music, or a song to those people who are as kind and as nice, as sympathetic and as patient as you are, for granting us this time. In your case, I have decided to leave you with a piece by Tchaikovsky, the Liturgy of St. John Chrysostom, which is a piece of the Orthodox Christians of the Russian Orthodox. And I hope that we will keep in touch in the future, because we really want to tell people that there is a need for religious freedom, and that at this moment that need for religious freedom is in Ukraine, although of course we would speak about that need in any part of the world. Thank you very much, Bishop.
See you soon. God bless you.